Hello and welcome to this edition of Games and Goals on RTB News. I'm Adam Reed in London and this is Reuters. Coming up on the programme. Leicester stunned Sevilla as the Foxes reached the Champions League last 8 for the very first time. And they're the last British team standing in the competition as Manchester City are dumped out by Monaco. And it's Judas, not Jose, as Mourinho responds to Chelsea chants. First, though, to another stunning moment in Leicester City's history as they progressed to the quarter-finals of the Champions League after beating Sevilla 2-0 on the night and 3-2 on aggregate. Trailing 2-1 from the first leg, it was captain Wes Morgan who made it 2-2 when he bundled in Riyad Mahrez's free kick. That scoreline would have been enough to see Leicester qualify on the away goals rule, but they weren't finished there and went 2-up on the night when Mark Albrighton scored. There was a tense final period for the Premier League champions, though, when Samir Nasri was sent off for clashing with Jamie Vardy, but then Kasper Schmeichel saved Steven Nzonzi's penalty. That would have taken the tie into extra time, while new permanent manager Craig Shakespeare was understandably delighted.
Memorable for everybody at the football club, myself included, but I think the supporters who got behind us from the first minute, especially the players who I thought was outstanding tonight, but everybody associated with the football club can be proud of that performance tonight. Of course, we spoke before, Claudio will always be fondly remembered by everyone at this football club for what he achieved and helped us achieve as a football club. Of course, the performance in the first leg when Claudio was in charge, that gave us the springboard for the result tonight.
Well, joining me this week to discuss all things football is former Wimbledon and Jamaica striker Marcus Gale and, as ever, Reuters senior sports analyst Nigel Stevenson. Marcus, coming to you first. Another stunning night for Leicester City in the Champions League. They keep on making these bits of history. What do you put this remarkable run down to?
I just think the players wanted to perform. I think they've got a duty to themselves as teammates that they need to perform, especially with what happened last month with Ranieri leaving and being dismissed and stuff. So I think the players themselves, I think what Craig said as well, they've performed well in that first leg. That was a springboard for the second leg as well. They gave them a chance. They weren't out the game. And by winning last night, how they did, it's fitting reward for them. Well,
on that point, Nigel, because it was Ranieri in the first leg, now it's Craig Shakespeare. He's had a couple of weeks now to get to know the players, but what can he do in 2 weeks? What do you put this bounce down to?
He's got their support. That's what it boils down to. It makes you wonder what was going on for the first 6 months of this season with Ranieri. Some say he tinkered too much, but something was going wrong. Maybe their heads got too big. Something wasn't right. Yeah. He's now been removed from the situation. Shakespeare was the glue, apparently, that kept them all together. And he's basically said, right, back to last season, back to basics. You support me, I support you, and we are then going to go and do the pressing game. And it's just like watching Leicester from last season. Yeah. That's what has happened. So, but who's responsible for that? All of them.
Well, Marcus, take us inside a dressing room of a top-flight club and just give us an idea, basically, how you would put their down, what you can put their struggles in the Premier League down to, because the change in mentality, can it be that instant?
It's a new world for them this season. They're playing Champions League football. And plus they've got the pressure of being the Premier League champions as well. That's a new territory for them to be walking in as well. So when you combine all these factors together, it will affect the players. They've had big wage rises as well. The speculation of players leaving or staying. They've kept majority of their players, apart from obviously N'Golo Kante. But it can have an effect on you. And if they stay up this year and make even the semi-finals, that will be a remarkable season for them.
Well, massive outsiders. I mean, how far can they go? Should anyone fear them now, or should they fear anyone?
I think everyone will be fearing Leicester. They're the team that no one wants to beat. They've got no track record at this level, no history, so you can't gauge them on anything apart from their performances this season.
Yeah. They really do stand out in this list, though, Nigel, don't they?
They do, but as the Juventus goalkeeper Buffon basically said, everyone wants to avoid Leicester now. They probably don't, but they don't know what they're up against. That's the thing that really scares them, and they know that what they do really well is this fast attack and this counter-attacking game, which is what won them the Premier League last season. If they get that form, and all the Champions League games are absolute freebies for them, they can be as absolutely out there as they want. There's no pressure on them. If they get beaten 10-1 by Bayern, 10-2 by Bayern Munich, they're still on a par with Arsenal, so that's okay. So they'll go out and go for it, which means they are very dangerous.
Well, if you've got the attention of Gigi Buffon, you're probably not doing anything too bad now. Leicester's result was in contrast to a tough night for Manchester City on Wednesday, where they crashed out of the Champions League on away goals to Monaco. They lost 3-1 in the Principality, meaning the tie ended an incredible 6-6 on aggregate, but Monaco went through on the away goals rule. Well, leading up to the match, Pep Guardiola had said that City's best chance was to play attacking football and score more goals. But these stats show that they struggled during the first half to exert any pressure on Monaco. That changed in the second as City dominated the match but wasted chances and meant it was too little, too late. Well, City went into the match with a 2-goal cushion, but just 8 minutes in, that was halved when Kylian Mbappe scored, and when Fabiano's strike put Monaco 2-0 up on the night, they were the ones going through on away goals. City managed to get a foothold in the second half with a much better performance and were just 13 minutes away from qualifying when Leroy Sané put them back ahead in the tie. But their defence couldn't hold on and Bakayoko headed in Monaco's third to seal a dramatic win. Now, after the match, Pep Guardiola admitted that the pressure on his side may have led to the defeat.
All the people expecting all the teams playing there in the Champions League win the Champions League. So the English media want the Manchester City has to win the Champions League. I think the French media, maybe PSG, but there are a lot of people and there are a lot of good teams, and we have to accept that next season try to do better to go next stages.
A very disappointed Pep Guardiola. But as for Monaco manager Leonardo Jardim, he was delighted that his side edged out City in this thrilling encounter. After the match, he said he was always confident his side could turn the tie around.
To qualify, you need to score 3 goals. It was a good prediction. Yes, I knew all about the team of Manchester City. It's difficult to play against them and not concede goals. That's because they are very strong in all positions and have the best attacker in the world. And when I told my players that if we score 3 goals we will qualify, they believed me and they played well and now they are happy.
Marcus, it's time to pick through the bones of where Man City went wrong this time. Pep's team selection came under criticism, so was that where the fault lied?
I think so. With Pep, he's always attacked teams, no matter who he's up against or what the scoreline is. It's that sort of Barcelona mentality. We saw it last week against PSG, where they've got to come back over a massive deficit and do it. And Pep's got that same mentality. I think he was just naive in his selection in terms of just securing a solid base to start with, maybe 2 holding midfielders, and he's still got the attacking flair no matter what. But I don't think it didn't cover the back line, which has come under big scrutiny this year, and he's probably a bit embarrassed to line up with 2 defensive midfielders. Quite
possibly. So, Nigel, I mean, it's one semi-final for Manchester City in the Champions League since they've entered into it. Why can't they get it right?
I have absolutely no idea, but I think the root of the problem is actually the whole season at Manchester City. Is that there's a defence that clearly doesn't quite work, and Guardiola wants them to dribble out from the back, which makes them even more on edge. I didn't actually watch the game. I listened to it on the radio, and it was fascinating because every time I sort of concentrated, it was, the midfield's lost the ball again and again and again. You do not win any Champions League game or any game in the Premier League either if every time your midfielders get it, they lose the ball. They're not picking bad passes. They're actually just being tackled. That can't happen. They need some leadership in the middle there to really, a Patrick Vieira type person who's going to bite your legs off and just shore it up. It just seemed completely absent. And there are lots of other problems that they've got. Normally they outscore people, but with the defence they've got, and also this. They froze in the headlights against a very good Monaco side. How they get over this, I don't know. It comes from leadership on the pitch, I think.
More money in the summer, potentially, for Manchester City. Now, still to come on Games and Goals, we'll have reaction from Jose Mourinho as he responds to chants of Judas by Chelsea fans. And Antonio Conte tells us why Manchester United are anti-football. Welcome back. Manchester United's hopes of a cup treble this season were upset this week, but Jose Mourinho came out fighting after his second Stamford Bridge return this season ended in another defeat. This time Manchester United were dumped out of the FA Cup by Chelsea, with Mourinho hitting back at fans who directed chants of Judas against him. Despite a 1-0 defeat on the night, Jose made sure he still had the last word.
They can call what they want. I am a professional. I defend my club, and until the moment they have a manager that wins 4 Premier Leagues for them, I'm the number 1. When they have somebody that wins 4 Premier Leagues for them, I become number 2. But until this moment, Judas is number 1.
Nigel, Judas is still number 1 though, but he had a tough night at Stamford Bridge yet again this season. How much will this one hurt him?
Very much, but the problem is he's not very graceful in defeat ever. What he does have to do is recognise that Chelsea are better than Manchester United at the moment. Clearly he's going to do everything in his power to change that round for next season, but he just has to know and accept it and stop being stupid about it. I mean, that's the best soundbite of the season, actually, but we haven't had many of those because normally it's a rant. But no, he just has to recognise it and be a bit more graceful about it.
Do they have a right to turn on him, though? Bear in mind that he got sacked twice. He didn't really...
Well, they're trying to goad him, and that's pretty easy because he's not exactly difficult to wind up, and then he goes off on one. He has a point. He was very successful there, but it all ended rather nastily. So they don't like him anymore. He's gone. Just move on, and stop. I find it very difficult to deal with because I think it's kind of pointless, but he does bring it on himself.
Absolutely. Well, Marcus, on that point, they're still unbeaten in the league. They've been unbeaten in the league for quite a long time, but they're still 6th. I mean, what's wrong at Manchester United still that they can't seem to get it right, seemingly in both boxes?
I think it's simple. They're drawing too many games, especially at home. I think they're playing really well at times, and teams can sit against Man United at Old Trafford and make it very difficult. But they've got the players to cut through that. You just need them performing at the right time to do that. Obviously, they're leaning a lot on Ibrahimovic, who's out for a couple more games. But you need the likes of Martial stepping up, Rashford getting a good run in there. We're not sure what's happening with Rooney at the moment, but they are just drawing too many games.
Going to be very interesting. Well, believe it or not, away from Jose Mourinho, there was a result on Monday night, and it was Chelsea the ones through to the last 4 of the FA Cup, and they're still on course for a double in Antonio Conte's first season in charge. But he wasn't too pleased with the treatment of some of his players during the match. In particular, what he called repeated kicks on Eden Hazard. As you can see here, the Belgian was fouled twice as much as anyone else during the tie. Manchester United's Ander Herrera was even sent off for a challenge on Hazard, with Conte calling the opposition anti-football.
I don't think that I'm crazy and I see only him this situation. This is my reply about the question. For us, 25 minutes was impossible to play football because he received only kick. It's not football for me. I don't think that this could be a tactic. This is the truth. And I think that everyone saw this, but I don't think. And I think that sometimes when you play against players with great talent, you try to intimidate these players. And I think that the referee must protect this type of players.
Well, Marcus, he talks about those types of... You're a tricky, flary forward player. Do you think that Antonio Conte's got a point that you should be protected more by referees if you've got that in your locker, you're more prone to being fouled?
Yeah, I think good players get fouled for a reason because they affect the game. They can hurt you, embarrass you at the same time, and I definitely think that Hazard was targeted by Mourinho to say, like, get into his head. Get something different into his head that he's not going to get an easy ride, because if he has an easy ride, he'll destroy Man United on the night. And it's just funny coming from Conte, who's an Italian.
I was going to say, the ultimate irony is he's coming from Italy, where they certainly know how to keep very flary players quiet. They stop them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, but when it's one of your own, I suppose it's going to hurt them.
The game's full of contradictions.
Absolutely. Well, one person who has not really contradicting anything. Everyone's singing his praises, Nigel, is N'Golo Kante. He was the difference on Monday. Another rave review again, and now he's adding goals to his game. Just how good is this guy?
Well, they laughingly call him on the radio when I was hearing about it, the Kante brothers, because he seems to be everywhere. He's a classic Chelsea player. You know, they've had Essien, they've had Makelele, who just sit in there quietly, just doing their business. He's absolutely brilliant, and now scoring goals. That really would add a completely different element to his game. He is the difference, I think, from last year in making Chelsea into a championship-winning side. He is fantastic.
Well, Marcus, we're getting to the stage of the season where individual awards are going to get handed out. You well know all about casting your votes for players like that. Would he be on your list for votes?
Yeah, most definitely. I think even Ander Herrera as well. I think his stats probably are on par, maybe even better than Conte's. But I think because he's in sixth place with Man United, he's not going to get the same sort of accolade at the moment, because Conte's had the Premier League win last year, he's come to Chelsea this year, and he looks back on course to win a second one. So, yeah, I think it's out of those two, but Conte should win that because of his past history, recent history.
He's doing very well at the moment with Chelsea. Back-to-back Premier League wins on the cards for N'Golo Kante. Well, Chelsea took the final place in the semi-finals of this year's FA Cup with that win on Monday night, and they now know who they'll be facing in the last four, and it's going to be Tottenham Hotspur. Well, here's confirmation of those ties. 4 of the top 5 in the Premier League currently up against each other in what looks like a very strong end to the competition. Arsenal saw off non-league side Lincoln and will now play Manchester City as Pep Guardiola makes at least a cup semi-final for an impressive 8th successive year. While the other tie, as I said, will be an all-London affair. 7 times winners Chelsea up against 8-time winners Spurs. The ties will be played at Wembley over the weekend of the 22nd and 23rd of April. Well, still to come on Games and Goals, we'll look ahead to the weekend's Premier League games, where Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool will be hoping for another big performance against one of their top 4 rivals. Well, it's on to the Premier League now, where Manchester City will be hoping to get over that Champions League disappointment when they return to league matters this weekend against Liverpool. Well, Liverpool are a point behind City going into the game on Sunday and are looking to do the double over Pep Guardiola's side. There's a big game towards the bottom of the table on Saturday with Bournemouth playing Swansea, whilst Arsenal will try to close the gap on the top 4 at West Brom. Leaders Chelsea will they're away at Stoke, and Tottenham will likely be without Harry Kane for the visit of Southampton. Now on to the Premier League, gents, and a big game at the Etihad on Sunday. Nigel, Liverpool, they've done very well against the rest of the teams around them. Why?
I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I think the stat is something along the lines of if they performed the same against the top 6 as they did against the bottom 6, they'd be top of the table, which is astonishing given their form. They were utterly useless last weekend against Burnley. Their first shot on goal was their equaliser, which was, I think, in injury time in the first half. They were awful, and yet they got a win, which is amazing. But they haven't lost against the top 6. Jurgen Klopp could really do with it. If they want to get into the top 4, they really need to win. And you think Manchester City are going to want to bounce back. So, very interesting game.
So, Marcus, this is a very impressive statistic, because we can see here Liverpool far and away the best side against those other sides. But the fact that they've got a very ugly win against Burnley, if they can add those ugly wins to their bow, as Klopp called it, then they could be a force and they could secure this top 4 place.
Yeah, they've got to look for that. I think the team is definitely fit, 100% fit. I think their problem is their freshness levels. Don't think that's 100% at times when they're going into games. Maybe they're picking and choosing when they're going to be 100% fresh, and it's most likely to be against the top 6.
So it is very congested though at the top of the table though, Nigel. Can both of these sides get into the top 4?
My current bet, and I'm not laying any money on it, is that I think Arsenal will pip Liverpool to the 4th place. They've got 2 games in hand, and Arsenal always get there. I don't know how they do it, but I suspect they will do again. I think Liverpool will miss out.
I'm glad you brought up Arsenal, because they travel to West Brom this weekend, looking to get their league form back on track. The Gunners have lost 3 of their last 4 Premier League matches, as well as being thrashed in the Champions League by Bayern Munich. Well, on the basis of those results, a section of fans have been protesting ahead of recent matches, asking for Wenger to leave the club. But despite their poor run of form, if Arsenal win their 2 games in hand, they will leapfrog Liverpool into 4th spot, as Nigel quite rightly alluded to. Now, on that basis there, Marcus, what do you make of the split between Arsenal fans? That they're saying that some are saying that Wenger should go. There's other sort of infighting saying that he should stay. And if they do win those 2 games, then they're back in the top 4 anyway.
I think it's a weird situation that he's leaning towards the fans to making up his decision. Surely it's a boardroom decision. The boardroom decision is made on the reaction of the fans, which is split at the moment. I think if he doesn't finish in that top 4, I think he's gone.
Well, Nigel, on that basis then, you put your West Brom hat on. They've lost their last 2, but traditionally a tricky game for Arsenal. How do you see it being this time?
I think this is the perfect fixture for Arsenal. I think they will undo West Brom and they will walk to 3 points. I think almost not worth them turning up. They're in 8th place, West Brom. They're exceeding all their usual expectations. They should be scrapping out to avoid relegation at this time of the season. They've already got there. They've gone on holiday. They're on a beach somewhere. Arsenal will win this game.
Well, just to underline just how close it is at the top of the table, we can have a look at things here. Chelsea are, of course, leading the way. They're 10 points clear of Tottenham in 2nd place. Manchester City are in 3rd, a point ahead of Liverpool, who are in 4th. Arsenal are 5th currently, with Manchester United a place worse off. They also have games in hand. They're in 6th spot on 49 points. Well, Tottenham, they're going to be without Harry Kane for their match against Southampton on Sunday because of a new ankle injury suffered last weekend. And he's now down for their FA Cup semi-final scheduled for the end of April. Well, Kane only lasted a couple of minutes in the tie against Millwall last weekend after being forced off, with the club saying it was a similar problem to the ligament damage he suffered earlier in the season, but not as serious. Initial hopes were that he will be back to face Chelsea at Wembley, but it's thought the North London derby against Arsenal a week later is more realistic. Well, this is just how influential Harry Kane has been on Tottenham. He's the joint top Premier League scorer this season with 19 goals. He scored 14 goals in 2017. Now, that's only behind Lionel Messi in Europe's top 5 leagues. He averages just over 0.6 goals per game in the Premier League in an overall Premier League era. That's only behind Sergio Aguero and Thierry Henry, and still actually ahead of Ruud van Nistelrooy and Luis Suarez. He's the top English scorer in the Premier League since 2014-15 with an impressive tally of 65 goals. So, Marcus, all that in mind, Harry Kane, very important to Tottenham. They're still fighting on a couple of fronts, including the FA Cup and the Premier League, vague title hopes as well. Is he key? Is his fitness key to what happens for the rest of their season?
I think so. I'm just worried for him because it's the same ankle that he injured at the start, and I think when you keep getting repeated injuries on the same body part, it weakens that body part. So I'm just a little bit worried for him personally because it could end up being a longer time on the sidelines. And if that happens, Tottenham is who's going to get the goals. Yes, they scored 6 last week, but a team with Harry Kane in it's always going to score goals.
But they've got other people to step in, but not necessarily a striker, Nigel.
Well, they have. I mean, the South Korean guy scored a hat-trick the other day. Son. Very, very good. Kane just operates, he scores from outside of the box, but he's just always in the right place. And I think that's what they don't have a replacement for, is somebody who's just there at the right place to poke the ball in. That's, I think, the difference. Maybe he needs a word from Andy Murray, because he wears those ankle protectors, doesn't he? That would be a good idea.
Maybe. Right, well, away from football this week, and there was a historic vote at Muirfield Golf Club, which voted to admit women members and scrapped their all-male policy. Previous decisions not to change the rules on women led to the historic Scottish course being stripped of its eligibility to host the Open Championship. But this most recent vote reached the 2/3 majority needed to change the rule. Well, Rory McIlroy described the time it's taken for Muirfield to overturn their policy as obscene and ridiculous. Novak Djokovic must be sick of the sight of Nick Kyrgios after the world number 2 suffered a second shock defeat to the Australian in just 2 weeks. This latest upset came at Indian Wells for a place in the quarter-finals as the often enigmatic Kyrgios won in straight sets. Djokovic, of course, joins Andy Murray out of the event after the Scot suffered his own early exit. Well, no such problems for Roger Federer, who will now face Kyrgios in the last 8 after again getting the better of Rafa Nadal. The Swiss, of course, beat Nadal to win the Australian Open title earlier this year and took this 36th meeting between the pair comfortably 6-2, 6-3. And finally, England's rugby team equalled the New Zealand record for consecutive Test wins at the weekend. They thrashed Scotland and notched up an 18th straight victory. If Eddie Jones' side beat Ireland this weekend, not only will they break the record, but they'll also win back-to-back Grand Slam Six Nations for the first time. That really would be some achievement. Well, that's just about it for this week's show, but please do join us next time as Gareth Southgate names his first squad for the first time as full-time England manager. And we look ahead to their internationals against Germany, as well as vital World Cup qualifiers. Well, that's just about it for this edition of Games and Goals. My thanks to Marcus and Nigel for their contributions. I'm Adam Reed, signing off from the Reuters studio here in London. Goodbye for now.